This is Queer Voices.
This is Jennifer Renee.
And Jack Valinsky.
We have a special guest in the studio with us.
Through the history of this program, we've talked to a lot of people, and we've talked to a lot of people that organize this community, but I think Cristan is probably one of the leaders of the pack, I would say.
You should see the look on her face when you said that.
Well, I have an awful lot of respect for you, and I think you know that, but I don't know if I've actually said that to you. This community is difficult sometimes. We're spread out all over the place. In some cases, I think part of this community think the battles are won. We got an East Parker elected as mayor, and everything is supposedly okay.
Right.
We also have a section of the community who makes good money, and they probably don't think that they need, sort of activism and community organization and all that type of stuff. Of course, when we talk to Ray, we know that isn't completely true.
Right.
Tell me a little bit about how you got involved and why you got involved.
Okay. Well, first of all, I want to correct. I don't want anyone to come off thinking that I somehow organize the transgender community, because that's just not true. I do want to say that one thing that I've noticed, for the transgender community here in Houston, it's just simply different. It's different than any other trans community in the United States. We do things and have things that San Francisco, New York, all these other places can't seem to put together. And I think that has a lot to do with the types of people. There was just a moment of time where there were a lot of people in this community who were very active, and without trying to bust anyone's anonymity, had a lot of roots in organizing people through 12-step organizations. And it seemed like a lot of us who were trying to make changes were coming at that with that type of an attitude, kind of this notion of selflessness and giving to others and making it your job to be there for the new person no matter what. If you need to talk to them at 3 o'clock in the morning, and it doesn't matter if you're pre-op, post-op, non-op, cross-dresser, intersex, all of that stuff. That just wasn't an issue in our transgender community. And there are other communities in the in the nation where they're still stuck there. The cross-dressers the transsexuals don't want to associate with the cross-dressers, and the cross-dressers don't want to associate with the drag kings and queens, and the intersex people don't want to, and that's just not Houston.
Why do you think that is?
Well, I think that has a lot to do with the types of people who had kind of that background in 12-step communities. Like I said, very, this notion of check your ego at the door whenever you step into a meeting to talk about what's going to happen was I know really prevalent in my mind. And a lot of the people that I worked with throughout my activism in the community also had that kind of morality or value system, if you will, that was really, really beneficial to our community. And also, I think part of the uniqueness of Houston is this type of community that it's liberal enough where we can go outside and not be immediately beaten down. But it is redneck enough to where the oppression is easily spotted. It's not that the trans community understands that there's still a fight. We have people murdered. We have situations where in the Houston library, people are getting arrested and thrown in jail for days for daring to use the restroom. People see that. They know that's, a reality for transgender people. And it's easy to organize a community whenever, first of all, you can easily identify what the problem is. People can see it very directly and honestly, and, it impacts their life. And when you have a group of people who aren't into organizing people for purposes of ego. You know, that I want to be the group leader and I've got this huge head and I'm going to tell everyone what, you know, has to be done, and it has to be done my way because I'm the only one with good ideas. I've noticed in the community, it's just not that way. It's just not. You know, whenever I came to the community, an intersex person was running the transgender group. You know, and that's, you know, the community that I walked into, which is very, very, very different than some of the other communities that I've noticed. What do you think?
Well, I was going to say that when I came into the community 94, 95,
yeah, that's about when
there was still a little bit of that residual one-upmanship, for want of a better term, and but there were a number of us who came in at that time, and I could name double handful of people who came in, and we sort of cross-pollinated.
Right.
We belonged to several support organizations, and so it's awfully difficult to have people stand there and say our organization is better than the next one when you had people right there who belonged to the other organization.
Right.
And it was during that environment that the Unity Committee was formed and started to grow, and all of the support groups and organizations started working together.
Absolutely, absolutely. And the thing that got me, getting back to your original question, Jack, was what got me involved in the community is, well, first of all, I found out about the community I was living in Galveston, and I happened to be at one night. It was just late at night, and I was just switching through the channels, and I heard the word transsexual, and I stopped. And I got this kind of fading in and out kind of radio station, and someone named Sarah De Palma was talking about something or another to do with transsexuals, and I went, oh my God! And I called up from Galveston and called up long distance and asked to be placed on hold so I could actually listen to the program, and that was my first connection. My second connection with the community was, I think it was a twit. In the back of the twit, I found this P.O. box that you could write to if you're transgender and needed help. And so I wrote to them, and I hadn't heard anything back. And at that time, my life was falling apart, absolutely falling apart. It had gotten out that I was going to therapy for being trans, and my job found out and fired me, and my life was falling apart, and I was losing all of my friends. And, you know, I thought that I thought that the best thing for me to do at the time would be to kill myself, that was the most rational thing to do. I hadn't yet met another transgender person. This was before the Internet. I didn't have the Internet. I felt utterly alone, and I had worked very hard at being very masculine. And I didn't think that I would ever have a voice that's passable or be able to walk outside my front door without people laughing and pointing. Or, and I thought the rational thing would be to just take my life. Why would I want to put my family through, this?
Right, and you're not alone, unfortunately. Right.
Well, right.
Yeah.
And what happened was the night I wrote out a suicide note, and the night that I was preparing for my suicide, the phone rang, and it was someone from Texas Association for Transsexual Support. And I didn't.
Yeah,
yes.
I remember.
And I didn't tell her what I was preparing to do, but we sat there and talked for hours and hours and hours, late into the night. And this community literally saved my life. Literally. I would not be here if it wasn't for the trans community. And so, I just, I have no qualms about giving back. I owe my life to the transgender community.
Phyllis Fry said a number of years ago that one of the reasons why the transgender community couldn't organize is because most people went through their change and then tried to get back into life and wasn't really interested in organizing.
Mm-hmm.
Other interesting thing is that I sort of think, and I'll probably get chastised over this, that the gay and lesbian community sort of has peaked because the organizations aren't as strong as they were 10, 15 years ago. A number of them aren't open. There's not a democratization in some of the organizations. And at least my experience in organizing is that the more you democratize, the more you give people sort of their, if they want to work on a project, let them do it.
Right.
And you work together, you talk about it, you try to figure out what's best for everybody, how it would work within the system, but you sort of let them go and do it. And I got incredible amount of success in doing that.
Absolutely.
And it empowers them also. Mm-hmm. So, and it's amazing how, at least from my viewpoint, somewhat looking into the transgendered community, how strong it is here in Houston. And it really amazes me that, and I can't be a judge for other cities, but what I've heard from other cities, as you said, it's not quite there. Mm-hmm. Now, let me ask you this, and we were more or less going to talk about you, but how do you feel about, does the gay and lesbian community and the transgendered community work together?
Well, yeah, I think, for instance, with the Transgender Center, we have a number of non-trans identified individuals who are on the board of directors. The transgender yoga class is led by someone who does not identify as being transgender. Now, for the I'll speak for myself. Okay. One time I was sitting here, I think it was here, and I was doing after hours. We were talking about stuff, and I got this look from saying what I'm about to say, and I had said that the definition of transgender is anyone whose physical makeup, emotional, sexual, or self-expression violates a cultural gender norm. And that I really get that a lot of the discrimination that gay people face is based in gender. That is, that whenever a gay person is bashed, it's not because they were having sex in the street. It's because perhaps they were walking a little bit different or talking a little bit different in a way that violates a cultural gender stereotype. And I've always felt, I've never had a problem working with the gay community, the queer, I see us as one community, and I generally say the queer community, and some people kind of have a problem with that, but that's, I see us as one community.
You're on Queer Voices.
Right, exactly.
Well, and that's sort of an interesting thing, because the show used to be called Lesbian and Gay Voices. Right. And then when I thought about what's the best inclusive word without using 15 alphabet letters, and when I brought it up to the crew, this was before Jennifer, I don't know if anybody was here at the time from this crew. Maybe they all left because of that, or because of me. But no, nobody had a problem with it, and then I passed it on to the general manager at the time, and they said, if you guys don't have a problem, we don't have a problem. Nobody ever commented on it. Now, isn't that neat?
Yeah.
Isn't that neat? And we could use that word, but I definitely feel that way, that we're all one community. I also sort of wonder, is the gay and lesbian community so hung up on this marriage issue that we're forgetting a lot of the other things, like the discrimination that is still legal in this city, state, and county?
Well, and that kind of goes back again to one of the big organizing factors for the transgender community is, all of the discrimination. I mean, we've had studies here of the Houston community, and we find over and over again that more than half of the entire transgender population is unemployed, regardless of degree status. I mean, we had in some surveys PhD level individuals that just couldn't get a job because they're trans. And it's not always like that. However, I think that, as we're going through this process of self-discovery and claiming our own truth and, going through this transition process, we all have to face this discrimination. It gets right in your face. You see it. Even if it isn't, that you lose your job and lose your home and all these horrible things happen, you're hypersensitive to it. And I think that because of that, the transgender community is more apt to want to work to change that than, you know, some of the, perhaps, let's say, gay youth that are coming up.
Right, and we can sort of fit in a lot easier.
Yeah,
in a sense.
it's you know, they've never seen someone die of HIV. They've never lived in a town where a mayoral candidate said shoot the queers. You know, that's not part of their reality. And for the trans community, we're still there in some significant ways. Like I said, a transgender person just tried to use the bathroom and was thrown in jail for 3 days for that crime. You know, and it wasn't a crime, but you know, they were imprisoned. You know, those things happen. And we all know it, and so I think in that way, we tend to be engaged and understand that this is a serious thing, and that we all have a part to play, and it's all our jobs. And one thing that I love that has become part of this community is this sense of inclusiveness. We don't care who you are. We don't care what you identify as. You're part of this community. And you have something valuable to say. You have something valuable to give back. And we want you to be a part of. We want you to come back. I really appreciate that about this community.
Well, one of the things, too, is that because of the activism of the trans community, because it's still is out there, it's the point of the spear. It's the one, oh, well, we're going to get them. They lose their job. We lose our jobs, and so on. But what it is that any time equality is gained for trans people, it equates right back to gays and lesbians.
Oh,
and
absolutely,
bisexual.
absolutely.
It actually reinforces anything. And, you know, when HISD moved for trans protection, you know, sexual orientation came right along with it. It was was almost afterthought. Once you got past the gender identity and expression point, then sexual orientation didn't matter. It was all part of it.
Absolutely. You know, and you know, I don't want to belabor a point here, but I've always found that it's fascinating that all of these national leaders came from Houston, that Houston has a transgender community, a transgender center and a transgender archive, and we have our own federally funded transgender housing program and a network of, you know, low-cost transgender healthcare options. And, you know, we have all those things because we worked for them. We organized, we, you know, wrote grants together. We did all of those things together. And, you know, I want to share with you this story. I love when this happens. I was at the Transgender Center, and this person walked in today, and they said, "Do you remember me?" And I was like, I don't know. And we
have a tendency to change a lot.
Exactly. And they said, you know, when we first met, I was homeless. And you sat down and talked to me. They, today, not only do they have their own home, they started their own cleaning business, which is quite successful. They're clean and sober, and their life is absolutely on a path of fulfillment and happiness. And whenever I first met them, they were just, you know, they had so many issues and problems, and the reason why they were able to move forward is because the community has decided that it's a priority to set egos aside and to work together as a unified community to address the issues that need to be addressed.
What do you see in the future?
Well, you know, you said something to the effect of the battle is already won. And I think in some regard, that's kind of the truth. I mean, here we are. The transgender community was where Anise got her very first donation to her campaign. We staffed a lot of her, her first run for office, and we were out walking blocks and all of those kinds of things. We do have the transgender community here in Houston is fairly powerful, in that if something happens, we can call up the sheriff. We can call up city council members. We're not in such a powerless state, and we don't have all this infighting and silliness going on. We get things done, and I think that will just continue. And, for instance, with this restroom situation at the library, when things like that happen, we can respond to it. And I think it's kind of like maybe for the trans community, a lot of what's left is the cleanup, so to speak. We've done a lot of fighting, and we've got a lot accomplished. And so now when someone's homeless, we can work with that person.
Isn't it still about education?
Absolutely.
It's just that there are just people out there that just don't get it.
Right, and there's some people that'll never get it, But we've kind of gotten to the point in the community where those people don't matter so much. The David Welches of the world, they're seen as lunatics.
Well, the whole HRC incident, where they basically threw the transgender community out of the bus.
Yes.
But it was Houston that really sort of said, and it wasn't just the transgender community, it was the gay community who said, wait a minute, this isn't right.
Yes, and I want to say, and HRC Houston was right there with us. So like I said, Houston is a very, very special place for the queer community. It just is. And we seem to be more unified, worked well together, focused, and we're able to get things done. It's just, I love Houston. I love the Houston queer community.
Well, Cristan, I thank you for coming by.
Oh, thanks.
I thank you for talking to us. And, of course, our doors are always open to you.
Well, thank you, Doc.
You're listening to Queer Voices.